Hi, everyone. Welcome back to our next session on our webinar series. I am Megha from Needle. I'm the business development analyst. And today we have Johnson Sequeira with us, who is the head of R&D team, the research and development team at Needle. And today we're going to be discussing about data organization and management and how crucial it is for the organizations in today's date and time. Hello, Johnson.
Hi there, Megha.
Hi, would you like to introduce yourself a little before we get into detail?
Hi everyone, my name is Johnson Sequeira, and I head the research division in Needle. And apart from being involved in active development, I also have a little bit of academic interest when it comes to research. Have also worked in a variety of domains, mainly specializing in blockchain, data, as well as machine learning. My role comprises more of working on our internal products, mainly to do with data management, context, as well as relevance.
That's great. You seem to have a lot of experience in this domain, and I think it'll be amazing for our viewers to get a lot of information from you. There's a lot of buzzword around data and how to use data within organizations, but there is very little talk around how the data should be organized before it's being used. So everyone talks about putting information in the right place at the right time. But then what would you like to talk about in terms of data organization being the basic of data interpretation?
I think the core understanding of what goes into when you say data organization or data management, and given that at this in this day and age, as you mentioned earlier, most of the organizations, whether to do with data, whether to do with machine learning, whether to do with any such domain, collect huge amounts of data, whether it's users, behavioral data, whether it's inventory, product related, financial data of any sorts and any form. And without proper organization of this, there's a lot of things that could play out in negative. So let me just start off with the basic to just explain that when you say data organization and management, it's not exactly setting up a system in place or setting up a tool in place. It basically means a set of processes or a workflow which helps you to organize the data in such a way that it's most efficient for your organization. Now, this is something that I believe in, and I have come across this throughout my work. It's that it's always on a case-to-case basis, and so goes for data organization and data management as well. So, given your particular domain or your organization, its needs, and what the key players in your organization require, that is what you have to consider when setting up a proper workflow or a proper mechanism of data management. So that's basically something that is the core. And I would also like to add that that is not something that is given much importance, knowing that now we're shifting to an age of analytics that is being done on users' data, that's being done on user behavior, and given all of that, there's not much importance given to this process, the process of organizing your collated data. So that's the reason I believe that you choosing this topic today is something very crucial, and I'm happy to be talking about it.
Like you said, yes. So data organization does become a very crucial point, because if you don't have the right collated data from all the departments or from different sources, it can get a little risky in terms of making informed decisions. So we're talking about collecting data from different departments and different sources. So how exactly do you think that works? Like collecting the information and storing it in a place?
I think you've just touched one of the core issues that industries, organizations face with data organization or data management. But that the question, just to answer your question, basically collating of data, and it could be When I'm saying data, it's not just restricted to files and folders or uh, not just rows of entries in the database. It could be anything. It could be your chunks of database files. It could also be files generated out of user activity, files uploaded by our users. It could be files that logs that have been generated by the system itself. So all of these are various sources from where data is generated.
Right.
Now, each and every source would have, of course, its own mechanism which has been set to, store the data in some form, and that form or that form of storage is, of course, decided by how the data is going to be used. However, uh, setting up a proper flow of organizing that said data is very, very important. The reason being, one of the few issues, like you just pointed out earlier, that's just one of the few issues. But then these are the various forms that data goes through in its life cycle. However, throughout its life cycle, there are many issues that organizations need to consider. First being, is your data scalable? Is it going to support the regular quality checks throughout your data life cycle? And make no mistake, your data nowadays works like any other entity. It has its own chain or a process or step by step that it follows. So is it securely accessible at each of these points for the teams or the departments that need access to it? First thing, like I also mentioned, is it scalable? Can it support multiple chunks of security upgrades, or can it support being transitioned to a different environment altogether? Is your data storage system flexible? Is it customizable? Is it future proofed? Right now, as we know that many organizations are basically shifting from having their focus on their core businesses to also focusing on the data that they collect. And it could be for any reason. It could be for analytics. It could be for security purposes, compliance purposes, for whatever reason. So is your data organization system future proof is one of the questions that we need to answer. So these are a few of the checks that are very important and are highly ignored in today's day and age. And I feel that having a proper data management flow is very important.
Here you speak about data scalability and other things that comes into picture when we're talking about data. So how important do you think is data privacy when it comes to organizing the data? Do you think that is something that has to be considered at this point in time, or is that something that comes into picture a little later once you start using the data?
Oh, data privacy is a very big issue. There's been a boom in users' privacy rights and compliances in the last few years. And that is the reason the separation between confidential and non-confidential data, regional compliances, encryption, and secured access to chunks of data of a particular entity. All of these things are something that have to be taken care of. And understanding that our data is going to be dynamic going forward, and in fact, any data is dynamic for that matter. Keeping a proper mechanism in place where all of these compliances or all of these security checks are taken care of is very important. So data privacy being on the top when it comes to customer facing organizations, and that is not even, I mean, we haven't even started talking about analytics yet. So this is just for customer facing entities where data privacy is definitely a very big thing to talk about.
I get it. So this is not something that comes in when we're talking about data organization. This is probably something that comes under
Right.
phases, a couple of phases after this.
Right. Correct.
Right. Okay. Because we're talking so much about data, so I thought it's important for us to even talk a little about, the privacy that goes into using the data that we're talking about. We spoke about how data has to be collected from different departments in order to make a decision or to make sense of whatever the data that we have. towards business decisions. So, what do you think would happen if a data organization structure is not maintained before trying to get any kind of insights from this data that has been collected?
Let me just skim over this topic in brief before I get to your question. First thing is, yes, we do need to set up proper points of access for different teams. And like I said earlier, I completely believe in taking up a particular task basis that particular use case. So given any use case, there are um, certain analytics or certain insights that would be very important or very crucial for the organization, and amongst the others, of course. And that is the reason having these proper access points, secure access points for individual departments or divisions of the organization is very important. And that can not just be on stagnant data. It also has to be on data in transit. It has to be on real time data. Like, let's say, and this is just out of one of the cases that we have worked on here at Needle. So there was this one particular client for which we did a little bit of understanding the requirements in data analytics, and we proposed a POC for them. So this was a financial client with huge magnitude of data being collated into a database, and this database was not easily accessible for any sort of insights and analytics, wherein they had to take a subset of the data offline and then run whatever algorithms or analytics generating processes on that subset, while the insights that the executive team would be seeing would not be on real time data, and that's not what you're looking for, right? So given that financial data, and this client was to do with the stock market, so given how crucial that data is, it does make sense, and it's very important, in fact, to have such access points at regular intervals, at different intervals for different departments, and at the same time optimize these access points in a way that it works to the best efficiency of that particular need or that requirement. So that is the reason, having those checks or having that entire workflow is very important. And this is just because of analytics. And how important analytics is for an organization that works on financial data. You cannot even imagine the negative impact, let alone be the positive impact. But then you cannot even imagine the negative impact that one wrong decision could, have. So that's the reason it's very crucial to have access to real-time insights, extremely accurate insights when you're dealing with, such important data.
I understand from the conversation that we've had so far that it's really crucial to understand the organization's data structure and to move ahead according to the plan. So moving on, I would like to ask you this, that in future, if an organization is looking towards getting a service like this, so me being a business analyst, I have come across clients who ask me these questions. So I would like to ask you this today, that how easy is it for you to devise a service which is compatible with the existing infrastructure in a specific company?
So in today's day and age, I don't think that's going to be much of a difficulty. Although let's not ignore that, given that organizations get used to the infrastructure that they have been set up on over time, it's not going to be that easy as well to transition out of an environment or to accept a major change to the already existing setup. However, I must stress on the fact that with the advancements that we have, there are a lot of tools and services that help smoothen this transition. And it's just about weighing your pros and cons, to be honest. And like I said, needs to be taken on a case-to-case basis. So if you see that the pros or the benefits of making that transition outweigh the minor, the discomfort or the minor efforts or the trouble that would be, or the impact, let's just say the minor negative impact that would arise out of making that transition, if it outweighs, if it's being outweighed by the positive benefits for your organization, it's definitely something that companies should look into. And like I said earlier, there are a lot of tools and services which help smoothen this transition. And of course, with agile technologies, I don't think that it's going to be a sudden shift or a sudden transition. It's going to be in stages, wherein with proper training and proper grooming, the infrastructure can adapt to this new change.
To speak about tools when it comes to these data organization. So, can we talk a little detail about these tools that you have? Have you worked on any tool like that, or do you have something to talk about in terms of what the tools can provide apart from just organizing the data? In terms of analytics, it can be anything basic.
Yeah, like I mentioned earlier, we do have a lot of such tools and services, or we could also have such an implementation in place which could help you smoothen that transition. And not just about the transition, but then we also can have, we also do have such systems which in a plug and play kind of a manner can help you with your data organization workflow. More specifically, in something that Needle has done, uh, is having a proper data management system in place. Now, uh, what this system does is basically encrypt your data in chunks, and while having them stored in different locations. First, second thing, we can run multiple operations on data while it is at rest, and so yeah, and that can be set up in any kind of storage system that the client needs. So this is just one of the few things that Needle looks at when it comes to data organization, and this has to do particularly with data storage. Now, talking about tools with in analytics or in insights, we have done a considerable amount of work on getting insights or context out of data. And like I mentioned at the beginning, I'm not just talking about data in the form of entries in the database. I'm also talking about data in the form of files. It could be documents, it could be music, audio files, it could be video files. So getting the context out of that data, not just the text or the string, but getting the context out of that data, having it stored in a particular format that allows for evolution of that context, and being able to parse or make sense out of that context, not just on your data, is something that we are actively working on. So these are a few of these are few of the many things that can be used as a plug and play within your data organization lifecycle.
So, in line with what I had mentioned earlier, I would like to just showcase a little bit about how we have worked with a huge data set for a particular client, of course. Uh, yeah, so this data set in point was a huge storage of SQL data set, which was then broken down into JSON files and stored at a particular location. Now, since the client was facing issues working with such a huge data set, and when I say huge, I'm talking about something in the lines of 125 GBs and above. And this data was getting accumulated day on day. So what we proposed as a solution for data management for this particular use case was having this data sourced to a particular data lake, right? And then with the help of Apache Spark, set up a system where SQL queries can be run on this data lake itself. Now, what will happen in such an instance is, you know, the client would have access to analytical data based on real time or based on real time data from their database, while not interfering with their existing database systems, right? Additionally, the advantage that they have was time. So traditional queries that this client used to run on their database used to take close to an hour. Even a very simple SQL query used to take close to an hour. So the solution that we proposed on an optimized system would hardly take about I don't know, anywhere between, like, say, 2 minutes to 7 minutes, depending on the nature of the query and how many rows that's being accessed. So if you see here, this entire setup of Apache Spark breaks down the job into separate nodes, and each apart from the master node, which organizes the entire the breakdown and the execution. The slave nodes then execute the query in chunks. So the query is worked on data in chunks. So that's the reason we have this, what do you say? We have this faster execution of queries compared to your traditional SQL systems. So here, if you see at my screen right now, that's just, I think we're just trying to show the first two rows of our data here. I will also showcase a standard SQL query. So let me just jump part. Yeah. So if you see here, this is something that we would normally run on any SQL database. So these queries can be efficiently managed if we have a setup like Apache Spark taking care of it, right? So if you see here, the query is executed and then stored in a variable, and then we use that variable to showcase and basically have a look at the data. The reason why we proposed this setup for this client is, like I mentioned earlier, they were looking for insights uh, on this independent data, and this was to do with financial data, more particularly stocks, share market transactions. So that's the reason they were looking at day end analytics or insights on a stagnant database, right? However, even then we had that advantage. The existing setup or the mechanism that they had used to take hours, versus the same queries that they were expecting from their data set being managed in this manner, cut down the time cut down the time to, say, like I said earlier, down to like 7 minutes tops. I think the most complex query that we had over here took somewhere about 6 to 7 minutes, and that again, it was just set up for a POC. There are certain more optimization steps that need to be taken care of and that need to be kept in place when it comes to having your entire data management workflow done. Yeah, so I think this is what I wanted to showcase in terms of one example of how efficient data management can improve any particular organization's way of working with data, with their existing data itself.
Wonderful. It sounds so interesting. So it must be even more interesting for you to be working on something so different,
Oh, it is
because I think
definitely, it's definitely, I'm so sorry to interrupt you, but it's definitely interesting, to be working on something like this where, we don't have much work being done this actively, or in this particular domain that we're trying to touch. And that's the reason, being part of this team where we are experimenting and trying to implement things, trying to put our heads together in uh, making sense out of data, getting meaning out of data. It's definitely very interesting for me to work.
what would you like to suggest or advise organizations who are looking forward to taking up a step such as what we've been talking about, organizing data?
This is out of my experience working with our different clients and their needs, and working on a case-to-case basis. There are a few best practices that organizations can look at and have in place when it comes to data management. So a few of the things that we already touched about, making sure that your entire data organization or the data management flow or the system or the environment that you have is future proof. When I say future proof, it should be flexible, it should be customizable, it should be scalable, it should have proper access points for the teams looking for insights or analytics, or for security teams looking to do compliance checks, um, simplifying that said access. Uh, Again, looking at it on a case-to-case basis, having distributed data silos or data lakes as and when necessary. If you're dealing with big data, having access to such data lakes where real-time data is pushed, and the analytics is done on as close to real-time data as possible. So these are few of the best practices that organizations can look at if they're planning to implement a data management uh, environment for themselves. And the value adds for this are a lot. I've already mentioned that, not just that it helps you curb the negative impacts that having access to inaccurate insights or inaccurate analysis, it also helps in efficiency. It also helps in improving your team or the collective organization's efficiency. A reason being, you get access to better analytics, you get access to more accurate insights that then results in better decision making on a very high level. So yeah, this is just one of the many value adds, and I can go on talking about this for hours. But I think I think we have stressed on the critical points here.
That is great. Yeah, I can imagine, because being an analytics student, I can understand how important unbiased data is, because dealing with biased data and trying to make decisions over that can be I honestly don't know the right word to put in there, but it's not
Terrifying.
going to be good.
I think terrifying is the word you're looking for.
Yeah, I think yes. Terrifying is definitely the word I'm looking for at this time, at this point. Right. It's been amazing, the entire conversation, and to know and understand what the research and development team at Needle is doing is another thing that is really interesting, and I'm sure this has caught a lot of attention with a lot of our viewers. So
Right.
yeah, it was really nice talking to you, Johnson, and we've got a lot of insights on in terms of what data organization is and how crucial it is in today's world. In terms of a lot of companies are looking forward to changing what it should look like in the future. So thank you
Right.
very much for your time. It was really nice talking to you.
Nice talking to you too, Mega. Thank you so much.